they'll go see wrestling.
And after all, who can resist classy entertainment like this? A good guess would be that the wrestling industry generates $250 million a year in income. Much of it off gate receipts from a yearly attendance of 10 million. At the big arenas, a guaranteed sellout almost every time. 20,000 at the Garden in New York. Almost as many at the Spectrum in Philly. And recently at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, a huge crowd watched Baron von Raschke teach the Road Warriors a lesson. But you don't always need a major arena. At WMC TV in Memphis, they simply set up a ring inside a studio. Been doing it that way on Saturday mornings for years. And the ratings, simply astounding. Often reaching 70% of the viewing audience. The big hero is local boy Jerry Lawler. He disdains the new showbiz influences in wrestling, preferring his grunts and groans the no-frills way.
It offends me greatly, but fortunately, there are a lot of people out there that are wrestling fans. And I think they're entitled to their opinion, and I think they're entitled to be fans, and I'm tickled to death that they're out there. And it offends me when somebody tries to take advantage of my profession and of those fans.
Who are those fans? Well, an independent research organization says 25 million people watch pro wrestling on TV, at least sometimes. 4 in every 10 of those viewers are female. Nearly half are between the ages of 18 and 34, considered a prime target group for advertisers. And it appears that the wrestling fan is fairly well educated. Why do these people watch? Different reasons.
Group that really gets into it. And they believe it. They think somebody's going to get hurt. They want somebody to get hurt. They yell and they scream and they believe that the wrestling is for real. Then there's a larger group for whom it is theater, and they treat it the same way they would the A-Team or the Dukes of Hazzard. They have a willing suspension of disbelief. They get into it. And they know, of course, that nobody's going to really get hurt, but they suspend that belief while they're watching it. And now there's another group, it may have been there all along, but a much new blood, a new infusion of interest, people for whom it's a spoof.
But not everyone's laughing. Sports writer Ray Didinger of the Philadelphia Daily News recently wrote a series of articles about pro wrestling. He was impressed by the genuine athletic prowess of many of the performers. He says the vast majority were personable and intelligent. But here's the bad news.
I heard stories and incorporated them in my series of the wrestlers who had to cut themselves with razor blades to draw blood, that this was an accepted practice, that it was something that the promoters would just very cavalierly walk into the dressing room before a match and say, okay, fellas, I want juice tonight. And what that meant was you had to go in the ring and cut yourself with a razor blade. And I said to the wrestler, and he told me that, and he pulled out the razor blade and he showed me how it was done, where he hit it. And he said the promoter would tell me when I had to do it. And I said, that's sick. And he said, no, that's the business.
A business which can sometimes be very cruel. Some wrestlers do make a handsome living, but others feel that they were continually exploited, lied to, and then blackballed when they spoke up.
If you decide to rewrite the script and do it your way, that could be enough to have you blackballed. I mean, they're clearly writing the script. You're reading the lines. And anytime you want to take your fate in your own hands, anytime you want to be the independent contractor that they keep claiming that everyone is, you run the risk of being blackballed.
While the wrestling business booms, it's still an industry with few, if any, employee protections. No unions, no pensions, haphazard medical reports. Didinger says it's high time for a change.
I think the business that the fellows that are talking about trying to get a union established, trying to do something like get the wrestling equivalent of a players association, something where they can have their medical benefits taken care of, something where they can have some kind of insurance, maybe even a pension plan. If the business is really generating that kind of money, I think they owe it to the guys that are in there.
If a New York State senator had his way, there'd be no guys in there. Legislation has been introduced to ban wrestling in New York State. When we asked Ray Didinger to sum up his thoughts on pro wrestling, here's what he said.
It's a very strange business, and it operates in a way that is totally unlike anything else I've experienced in any other sport, entertainment field or anything. I mean, people say, is it theater? Is it sport? Is it theater sport? It's none of those. It's wrestling. It's something else. It's another world. To try and draw analogies between the two, I just don't think it can be done. I mean, it operates by a code and a sort of morality that is unique unto itself.
Let's see here. The Hulk, the Superfly, and the Sergeant aren't the only heroes around. Pro wrestling didn't always enjoy national attention. It's been around for years in small towns and local markets. And it's in those small towns where pro wrestling still enjoys its greatest following.
Arenas like Madison Square Garden may be at the heart of the American sports scene, but it's the heartland of America, small towns like this, where our sports first take hold. Pro wrestling knows that, and wrestling impresarios like Fritz von Erich embrace their small-town fans with a loyalty that's as firm as a hammerlock.
Well, I was raised in a small town for one thing, and I love small towns. And I can recall back in little Jewett, Texas, where I was raised, any side show or medicine show that came through town, it was big time to us because we didn't have anything down there. A lot of the towns today are similar in size. They have nothing either except that television every night. And when world-class wrestling comes and the stars and young athletes they've seen on that television there through a long period of time come into town to their high school gym or whatever, they generally pack the gym. They turn out to sit. And we love them, and they love us.
It's Sunday in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Here and all across America, it's a day for rest and recreation. A chance to do a few chores around the house, maybe catch a ball game on television. And it's a day for religious devotion. Here the faithful fill churches and chapels, and afterward, the Civic Center. For on this Sunday, pro wrestling has come to town.
Surrounded by his most important possessions, flags, family, and pro wrestling memorabilia, Eddie Naquin, a Louisiana Cajun, is a fan without peer. For Eddie, home is happiness, but ringside is paradise.
Oh, Eddie was such a quiet man. You never heard it, man. He'd sit in his rock and watch TV, but when wrestling comes on, honey, I cannot pass in front of him because he'll jump at me.
In fact, Eddie will jump at anyone who suggests that wrestling's truths are not self-evident.
Well, I'll tell him I'll tell it like it is. They tell me it's fate. I'm saying, let me tell you one thing. You like something you like, I don't like what you're doing. What you don't, but I don't tell you nothing. I like wrestling. That's the only thing I like wrestling. You say it's fate, you'll be fate yourself. That's what I tell him.
Hey, you want my glasses?
And Eddie wishes everyone saw wrestling the same way he does.
If I could get close enough, I'll swing most part at one. But I don't bother them at all. But I go for my wrestling and all. I go for the man the good guy, you know.
Sit down, boy.
What's Eddie like after he comes home from a match?
Oh, he won't let me go to bed. He talks to me until hours of the morning.
I can't talk, I'm host.
And I says, well, honey, I've watched him. And he says, well, listen to me. And he talks, and, well, he gets so hoarse, I'm popping cough drops in his mouth.
You say, honey, here, a cough drop. I know you can't talk.
But when he can't talk, he dreams about superhero Jim Dugan. For apple pie. No matter what troubles Dugan faces in or out of the ring, Eddie believes his own unyielding faith will pull his superstar through. Even in the face of an illegally loaded glove.
Below you go.
In the end, good does conquer evil. Pro wrestling almost never fails to reward Eddie's fate.
If the measure of a sport's success is the enthusiasm of its fans, then pro wrestling is a colossal hit. Just listen to these people. Oh, it is wild out there. Eddie Nakan is just one of many in attendance here who will go home with a soaring spirit, if a sore throat. And what about the pro wrestlers? Well, they go on down the road. There's another show tonight, another packed house. For in every town in America, there's another Eddie Nakan.
USA! USA! USA!
Youngster first displays an interest in sports, his parents will often try and provide some guidance, directing him toward baseball or football, maybe basketball. But who would ever suspect that some of these budding young athletes would wind up as professional wrestlers?
I found out wrestling was quite lucrative, and then I stepped aside. Professional wrestling, and I never went back, and I don't regret it as of this day.
Ernie Ladd, the towering all-pro defensive tackle of the San Diego Chargers, Houston Oilers, and Kansas City Chiefs, retires after 8 seasons in the American Football League to become a giant in professional wrestling. Linebacker Wahoo McDaniel, number 54 for the Jets, who also played with the Oilers, Broncos, and Dolphins, turns in his football gear after 9 AFL seasons for a pair of Indian boots. And Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, joined the wrestling ranks after a career at the University of Tampa, where the running back, number 40, played with Freddie Solomon and John Matusak.
I was 235 pounds and ran a 4.740, and you know I could do it just as good as anybody else. But I really chose this over that. It was always in the back of my mind. I always wanted to wrestle because I liked that one-on-one contact.
Paul Orndorff really was a good one, and you talk about Wahoo McDaniel, who's a great football player in my opinion. And then you got other wrestlers, you know, in other sports, like the weightlifter, the great Ken Patera. You know, he was an Olympic lifter. Then you have Steve Williams, who I thought was a great football player in college at Oklahoma, and also a great wrestler, 4 times All-American at Oklahoma. Then he's a professional wrestler right today. He's really great. So these are some of the men that I feel as though that were great athletes in professional wrestling.
But the big man will always be the king.
When you're 6'9" and weigh over 300 pounds and wear a size 17 shoe, that's not a foot that's big enough to cover the ground that you walk on. And then if your voice comes out a little bit, you can intimidate.
The Ernie Ladd that I've watched on television is an Ernie Ladd that completely dominated football in the 60s, was an all-pro defensive lineman. He came into the world of wrestling. I watched him come on TV. He talked slow. He intimidated the crowd. And that guy has some charisma.
You got it right, my friend. Ernie Ladd has charisma that talk the way he want to, walk the way he want to, and do the things that he desires to do. Anything else?
Number 74, Merlin Olsen, did what he wanted to do on the football field for 15 years. The all-pro Rams defensive tackle, along with his brother, was recruited by wrestling promoters with contract in hand and pens ready.
They had names all picked out. I mean, they'd figured this. My brother Phil, who's about the same size I am, is blonde-haired and blue-eyed. He was going to be the blonde, was going to be the Kodiak Kid. And I think we were going to be good guys, but they were making a lot of promises. They were saying, you come and go to work, and within 2 years we'll have you on the top of the heap with the World Tag Team Championship. Now, I think they might have lied a little bit about that.
They might have stretched you just a little bit. Well, they talked big money, didn't they?
They did. In fact, when they initially contacted me, they were talking about a guarantee of $250,000 for like a 6-month tour. But I simply didn't have any interest in being away from my family that long. And that was the first giant negative that hit me.
Having taken his wrestling show on the road for some 2 decades and playing professional football for nearly 1, the King would have made some different moves if he could do it all over again.
I would wrestle. You know, that might seem harsh, but it is the truth. I really, when I wrestle, if I had to make a decision between the 2 sports, I really loved wrestling. See, I was close to the people. I could control a crowd with my ability. I always felt that it was a personal challenge to be able to to work a crowd up. I can put them in the palm of my hand. I can get them as mad as I wanted to get them. And then I can get them as mellow as I wanted to get them, you know. And this, to me, was always a great pleasure.
So that's our look at the phenomenon of pro wrestling. Now, some of you may be wondering why we haven't posed the age-old question, is wrestling fixed? Is the outcome of matches actually known long before the grapplers enter the ring? Is that real blood you see spilled, or just some artfully applied ketchup? Well, if you'd actually like to know the answers to these questions, why don't you go ahead and ask them? For Bud Collins, Dave Rowe, and Greg Lewis, I'm Bob Costas. So long, everybody.
Dismiss!